Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopi Kante Radha Kante Namostute Tapte Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chev Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudire. बोलो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। हरे कृष्णा जय।
हरे कृष्णा गोविंद, हरे कृष्णा जय।
हरे कृष्णा राधे जी।
चलो तो हम लोग कल श्लोक 50 पढ़ रहे थे ऑफ अध्याय 12, राइट, अबाउट ध्रुव महाराज गोइंग बैक टू गॉड हेड। और जैसा कि हम लोग पढ़ रहे थे, ध्रुव महाराज he of course one of the purest devotee, then he gave up the whole kingdom, and then of course he's going back to Godhead. Sunand and Nand, associates of Lord Vishnu, came to pick him up in the plane, and then he passed through the Saptarishi, and then he went to the Vaikuntha Dham, right? It was also mentioned that all the stars and planets, everything is rotating around also Dhruv Tara, right? So then we saw that Narad Muni came, and Narad Muni spoke about Maharaj Dhruv. And then Maitreya Muni is saying that anyone, we read this yesterday, that persons who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord should recite this narration of Dhruv Maharaj without taking remuneration. Yeah, what that means is, कई लोग कथा करते हैं, पैसे लेते हैं, saying that the pure devotee should recite Dhruv Maharaj's narration. Yeah. And specifically, recitation is recommended because on the full moon or dark moon, right, Amavasya or Purnima day, on the day after Ekadashi, yeah, on the appearance of the Shravan star, at the end of a particular tithi, or the occasion of Yatipat, at the end of the month, or on Sunday, such recitation should of course be performed before a favorable audience. When recitation is performed this way, without professional motive, the reciter and audience become perfect. Yeah, and becoming perfect means what, right? Becoming perfect means getting to the purest service, purest devotion of Lord Shri Krishna. That's what it means by perfect, right? So we'll start with the next shloka, 51, Anilji.
ज्ञान मज्ञात तत्वाय यो दद्यात्स सत्पथे मृतम कृपालोर्दीननाथस्य देवास्तस्यानुग्रहणते. The narration of Dhruv Maharaj is sublime knowledge for the attainment of immortality. Persons unaware of the absolute truth can be led to the path of truth. Those who, out of transcendental kindness, take on the responsibility of becoming master protectors of the poor living entities automatically gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So see how important the narration of Dhruv Maharaj is, right? The whole Bhagavatam we were reading. And again, it's a long purport, but a very nice purport. So let's read this, Ajay.
Sure. Jnanam Ajnanta means knowledge with Jnanam Ajnata means knowledge which is unknown almost throughout the entire world. No one knows actually what is the absolute truth. Materialists are very proud of their advancement in the education, in philosophical speculation, and in scientific knowledge, but no one actually knows what the absolute truth is. The great sage Maitreya therefore recommends that to enlighten people about the absolute truth, tattva, devotees should preach the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the entire world. Srila Vasudeva especially compiled this great literature of scientific knowledge because people are completely unaware of the absolute truth. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is said that Vyasadeva, the learned sage, compiled this great Bhagavat Puran just to stop the ignorance of the mass of the people. Because people do not know the absolute truth, this Srimad Bhagavatam was specifically compiled by Vyasadeva under the instruction of Narad. Generally, even though people are interested in understanding the truth, they take to speculation and reach at most the conception of impersonal Brahma. But very few men actually know the personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so it tells why Vyasadevji compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. And again, let's continue. Anilji.
The citation of Srimad Bhagavatam is specifically meant to enlighten people about the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although there is no fundamental difference between impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Person, factual immortality cannot be obtained unless and until one attains the stage of associating with the Supreme Person. Devotional service, which leads to the association of the Supreme Lord, is actual immortality. Pure devotees, out of compassion for the fallen souls, are kripalu, very kind to people in general. They distribute this Bhagavat knowledge all over the world. A kind-hearted devotee is called Dinanath, protector of the poor, ignorant mass of people. Lord Krishna is also known as Dinanath or Dinabandhu, the master or actual friend of the poor living entities. And his pure devotee also takes the same position of Dinanath. Dinanathas are devotees of Lord Krishna who preach the path of devotional service, become the favorites of the demigods. Generally, people are interested in worshipping the demigods, especially Lord Shiva, in order to obtain material benefits. But a pure devotee who engages in teaching the principles of devotional service, as prescribed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, does not need to separately worship the demigods. The demigods are automatically pleased with him and offer all the blessings within their capacity. As by watering the root of a tree, the leaves and branches are automatically watered, so by executing pure devotional service to the Lord, the branches, twigs, and leaves of the Lord, known as demigods, are automatically pleased with the devotee and they offer all benedictions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So, Hare Krishna, Jitendra. Krishna, padhoge?
इदं मया ते भितं कुरु हृदस्य विख्यात विशुद्ध कर्मणा यथा भर्ग क्रीणान् मानु मात्र ग्रह च विष्णु शरणम यो जगाम. The transcendental activities of Dhruv Maharaj are well known all over the world, and they are very pure. In childhood, Dhruv Maharaj rejected all kinds of toys and playthings, left the protection of his mother, and seriously took shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. My dear Vidur, I therefore conclude this narration, for I have described to you all its details. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, Maitreya Muni, who is telling Mahatma Vidur, the whole narration of Dhruv Maharaj, is saying, he concludes that now, right? And it says that it is said that Chanakya Pandita, that life is certainly short for everyone, but if one acts properly, his reputation will remain for a generation. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is everlastingly famous, so the reputation of Lord Krishna's devotee is also everlasting. Therefore, in describing Dhruv Maharaj's activities, two specific words have been used: Vikhyat, very famous, and Vishuddha, transcendental. So Dhruv Maharaj's leaving home at a tender age and taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the forest is a unique example in this world. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the 4th canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruv Maharaj Goes Back to Godhead Vaikuntha Lok. Bolo Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Okay, so we finished chapter 12 and we will start with chapter 13, yeah, which is about description of the descendants of Dhruv Maharaj. So what happens next? Yeah. Anilji?
निशम्य कोशार पवर्णित्वं ध्रुवस्य वैकुंठ पदाधिरोहणं करुण भावो भगवत् धोक्षजे प्रस्तुं पुनस्तं विदुरा प्रचक्रमे. Sut Goswami, continuing to speak to all the rishis headed by Sonak, said, after hearing Maitreya's rishi describe Dhruv Maharaj's ascent to Lord Vishnu's abode, Vidur became very much enlightened in devotional emotions, and he inquired from Maitreya as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so you see Sut Goswami continuing to speak to all the rishis, right? So if you remember, where is Sut Goswami speaking at what place?
Naimisharanya?
Naimisaranya, right? So if you remember, right, the head of all the rishis, Sonak Muni, had requested Sut Goswami ji to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam for the benefit of all the people in Kali Yuga. And why did Sonak Muni ask Sut Goswami to recite that? Do you remember why Sut Goswami was asked to recite Srimad Bhagavatam?
I think he was present.
Right. He was present when Sukdev Goswami ji was reciting this to Parikshit Maharaj.
Yeah.
Right. So Sut Goswami was present when Sukdev Goswami was reciting to Parikshit Maharaj. So he knew the whole Bhagavatam. So all the rishis headed by Sonak Muni requested Sut Goswami to speak. And when Sut Goswami is explaining, he is describing how Mahatma Vidur met Maitreya Muni, and Maitreya Muni is answering all the questions of Mahatma Vidur. Yeah. So in continuing that, Mahatma Vidur again inquires from Maitreya as follows. So let's read the next shloka again.
Vidur Uvach Ke te prachetaso nam kasya patyani suvrat kansya navave prakhyata kutra vasam satra masat. Vidur inquired from Maitreya, O greatly advanced devotee, who were the Prasatyas? To which family did they belong? Whose son were they, and where did they perform the great sacrifices? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so Vidur Mahatma is asking Maitreya Muni, who are the Prachetas? And who are the Prachetas? If you remember, after Dhruv Maharaj went back to Godhead, then Narad Muni spoke few sloks for Dhruv Maharaj in front of Prachetas. So that's where the Prachetas are coming from. Yeah. So Narad Muni telling all this about Dhruv Maharaj to Prachetas. So now Mahatma Vidur is asking, like, who are those Prachetas where Narad Muni was speaking about Dhruv Maharaj? Yeah. It says here, right, the great Narad singing in the previous chapter of the 3 verses in the sacrificial arena of the Prachetas gave another impetus to Vidur to ask further questions. Yeah. Jitendra?
अन्ये महाभागवतं नारदं देवदर्शनं येन प्रोक्त प्रिया योग परिचर्या विधिर्हर. Vidur continued, I know that the great sage Narad is the greatest of all devotees. He has compiled the procedure, the Panchatrika procedure of devotional service, and has directly met the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And of course, everyone knows, and so Vidur Mahatma knows that, of course, Narad Muni is Mahabhagavatam. Yeah. Mahabhagavatam is the greatest of all devotees. That's how Dhruv Maharaj was also referred as. So, Hare Krishna. What again?
There are two different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is called Bhagavat Marg, or the way Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is called Pancharatika Vidhi. Pancharatika Vidhi is the method of temple worship, and Bhagavad Vidhi is the system of 9 processes which begin with hearing and chanting. The Krishna conscious movement accepts both processes simultaneously and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Panchkartrika procedure was first introduced by the great sage Narad, as referred to here by Vidur. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So one important part to know here is something called Panchartrika procedure. Yeah, which is a procedure of devotional service. Yeah, and procedure of devotional service to the in the temple. Yeah, it says here Panchartrika, which is the method of temple worship. Yeah. At the same time, the other mark is the Bhagavat mark, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, and doing hearing, chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam. Right. So those are the different marks. And what is being mentioned here, of course, the Krishna conscious movement has both the processes simultaneously. So we also read Srimad Bhagavatam, we also do the temple worship, and we also do the chanting and Ishmaranam and Kirtanam. Right? Yeah. Hare Krishna, Rinaji?
Hare Krishna, yeah.
Pardon?
Yes. Swadharmashile Purushe Bhagwan Yagya Purusha Ijmano Bhaktimata Naradena Rita Pila. While all the Prachetas were executing religious rituals and sacrificial ceremonies and thus worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his satisfaction, the great sage Narad described the transcendental qualities of Dhruva Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So as we remember, Dhruv Maharaj spoke few shloks for, Narad Muni spoke few shloks about Dhruv Maharaj to Prachetas. Yeah. And it says Narad Muni is always glorifying the pastimes of the Lord. In this verse, we see that not only does he glorify the Lord, but he also likes to glorify the devotees of the Lord, right? Like Dhruv Maharaj. The great sage Narad's mission is to broadcast the devotional service of the Lord. For this purpose, he has compiled the Narad Pancharatra, yeah, a directory of devotional service, so that devotees can always take information about how to execute devotional service and thus engage 24 hours a day performing sacrifices for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. So Pancharatra is the one which is compiled by Narad Muni. And as you can see, when the Prachetas were performing sacrifices according to that direction, right? Then Narad Muni was satisfied to see these activities. So he wanted to glorify Dhruv Maharaj in that sacrificial arena. Yeah. Ajay?
Yasta Devarshana Tatra Varnita Bhagavad Katha Mahashushuvashe Brahman Kastin Netra Chastu Maharsi. My dear Brahman, how did Narad Muni glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what pastime were described in that meeting? I am very eager to hear of them. Kindly explain fully about the glorification of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So this is Mahatma Vidur asking Maitreya Muni. Yeah. Jitendra?
मैत्रेय उवाच ध्रुवस्य चोत्कलपुत्र पितरि प्रस्थिते वनं Sarvabhauma Shriyam Mechhadra Raja Sunam Pate. The great sage Maitra replied, My dear Vidur, when Maharaj Dhruv departed for the forest, his son Utkal did not desire to accept the opulent throne of his father, which was meant for the ruler of all the lands of this planet. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so Maharaj Dhruv, of course, was ruling the whole planet, right? And his son Utkal was supposed to be the next, but he did not accept that, right? Anilji?
Sajjanmano prashantatma nisangaha samdarshanah pradarshaloke vitatmatmanam lokamatmani. From this very birth, Utkal was fully satisfied and unattached to the world. He was equipoised, for he could see everything resting in the super soul, and the super soul present in everyone's heart. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Utkal, the eldest son of Maharaj Dhruv, was unattached to the world, right? So he was like Samdarshana, then Vitatam Atmanam, and then Lokma Atmani. So he could see everything resting in the super soul, right? Like Virat Swarup, if you remember how everything is within the Virat Swarup of Lord Vishnu. And then he could also see the super soul present in everyone's heart. Yeah. And it's nicely described here as Rinaji.
The symptoms and characteristics of Utkal, the son of Maharaj Dhruva, are those of a Mahabhagavat. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 6.30, Yumam Pashyati Sarvatra Sarvam Cha Mai Pashyati. A highly advanced devotee sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere, and he also sees everything resting in the Supreme. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina. Lord Krishna is spread all over the universe in his impersonal feature. Everything is resting on him, but that does not mean that everything is he himself. A highly advanced Mahabhagavat devotee sees in this spirit. He sees the same super soul, Paramatma, existing within everyone's heart, regardless of discrimination based on the different material forms of the living entities. He sees everyone as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mahabhagavat, who experiences the Supreme Godhead's presence everywhere, is never missing from the sight of the Supreme Lord, nor is the Supreme Lord ever lost from his sight. This is possible only when one is advanced in love of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, advance in the pure devotional service. Yeah. Anilji?
Atmanam Brahma Nirvanam Pratyastamita Vigraham Avabodha Rasaikatma Yamananda Manu Santatam Avyabhachin Yogadni Dagda Karmalashaya Sarupam Varundhano Natmanoanyam Tadekshata. By expansion of his knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, he had already attained liberation from the bondage of the body. This liberation is known as Nirvana. He was situated in transcendental bliss, and he continued always in that blissful existence. He expanded more and more. This was possible for him by continual practice of Bhakti Yoga. It is compared to fire because it burns away all dirty material things. He was always situated in his constitutional position of self-realization, and he could not see anything else but the Supreme Lord, and himself engaged in discharging devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So he had already attained liberation from the bondage of the body. Whom are we talking about here?
Maharaj Dhruv.
No. So this is about Maharaj Dhruv's son, right? Utkal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because Utkal did not accept the kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was already attained liberation from the bondage of the body, right? And so this he was always situated in the transcendental bliss. Yeah. Actually, nice purport. Let's try to read this, Rinaji.
These two verses explain the verse in the Bhagavad Gita 18.54. Brahma Bhuta Sannatma Na Sushati Na Kankasati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labhate Param. One who is transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he achieves pure devotional service unto me. This is also explained by Lord Chaitanya in his Shikshastaka in the beginning of the first verse. Cheto Darpan Marjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Sreya Kairava Chandrika Vitarnam Vidha Vidhu Jivatmanam. The Bhakti Yoga system is the topmost yoga system, and in this system, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the foremost performance of devotional service. By chanting the holy name, one can attain the perfection of nirvana or liberation from material existence, and so increase one's blissful life of spiritual existence as described by Lord Chaitanya. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So the important part which is mentioned here is by chanting the holy name, one can attain the perfection of nirvana or the liberation from material existence. What do we mean by liberation from material existence? What is the material existence? Right? Is that the cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age? Yeah. And how do you get out of that? How do you get liberated from that? Material existence is by chanting the holy name, is what is being mentioned here. Yeah. And so one can increase the blissful life of spiritual existence. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. When one is situated in that position, he no longer has any interest in material opulence or even a royal throne and sovereignty over the whole planet. This situation is called Viraktir Anyatra Syat. It is the result of devotional service. The more one makes advancement in devotional service, the more one becomes detached from material opulence and material activity. This is spiritual nature full of bliss. This is also described in Bhagavad Gita 2.51. Param Desva Nivartate. One ceases to take part in material enjoyment upon tasting superior blissful life in his spiritual existence. By advancement in spiritual knowledge, which is considered to be like blazing fire, all material desires are burned to ashes. The perfection of mystic yoga is possible when one is continuously in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by discharging devotional service. A devotee is always thinking of the Supreme Person at every step of his life. Every conditioned soul is full of the reaction of his past life, but all dirty things are immediately burned up to ashes if one simply executes devotional service. This is described in Narad Pancharatra Sarvopari Vinimuktam Tat Paratven Nirmalam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So I think the important aspect mentioned here is the more one makes advancement in devotional service, right? So more and more we chant, and as we do Shravanam, Kirtanam, as we are reading more of Bhagavatam, right? More and more we do, we condition souls, right, who are impure, but we become more detached from the material opulence and material activity, right? And so we head towards the spiritual nature, which is full of bliss. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Ravi.
Hare Krishna.
No. Okay.
Jadan the badhiron mukt mukakritiranmanti lakshitah pathi balana prashanta chirri valanalah. Utkala appeared to the less intelligent person on the road to be.
I got muted, Ravi.
Although he was not so. He remained like fire covered with ashes without blazing flames. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So who is Utkal?
Dhruv Maharaj's son.
Right. Yeah. Dhruv Maharaj's son. And Utkal should have been the next king of this whole planet, because that's what Dhruv Maharaj was. But he was totally situated in transcendental bliss. So he did not want the kingdom, but then also he appeared to be less, to the less intelligent one, he appeared to be foolish, blind, dumb, deaf, and mad, right? Because totally in the devotional service. So he was actually, he wasn't that, but that's how he was perceived by the less intelligent people, right? Is what is being mentioned. Matvatam jadamunnamatam kulvridah samatrinah vatsaram bhupatim chakra ayarviyam sambhrame sutam. So for this reason, the ministers and all the elderly members of the family thought Utkal to be without intelligence and in fact mad. Thus his younger brother named Vatsar, the son of Brahmi, was elevated to the royal throne and he became king of the world. Yeah. So we are going to pause here. So as you can see, what's happening is Mahatma Vidur is asking Maitreya Muni to describe more about the Prachitas and then Dhruv Maharaj's dynasty. And so Maitreya Muni is now talking about Dhruv Maharaj's son. So one son is Utkal, who is in transcendental bliss. He doesn't want to rule the world. And so the other younger brother named Vatsar, younger son of Dhruv Maharaj, the son of Brahmi and Dhruv Maharaj, was elevated to the royal throne and he became king of the world, right? And so rest, of course, we are going to read further. I'll take a pause. See you tomorrow at 10 p.m. And since it's about Dhruv Maharaj going back to Godhead, we are again going to hear the stuti of Dhruv Maharaj. The stuti which Dhruv Maharaj did for Lord Vishnu. Yeah. So it's a stuti of 5 minutes and then we will pause for that and meet you next time. So.
Dhruva uvacha Yutah pravishya mamavacamimam prasuptam Sanjeevayathyakhila shaktidharah swadhamna Anyascha hastacharana shravanattvagadi Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam Ekastvameva bhagavan Shaktya Mayakhyayorugunaya mahadadyashesham Srishvanuvishya purushastadasadguneshu Nanevadarshu vibhavasu vadvibhasi Tvaddattaya vayunayedamachashta vishvam Sukta prabuddhaiva natha bhavat prapannaha Tasyapavargya sharanam tava palamulam Vismaryate krutavidha kathamartha bandho Nunam vimushtamatayastava mayayate Ye tvam bhavapyaya vimokshanamanyaheto Archanti kalpakadarum gunapopabhogyam Icchanti yat spashajam niraye pindranam Ya nirvritis पादपद्म ध्यानात् भवज्जनकथा श्रवणेन वा स्यात् सा ब्रह्मणि स्वमहिमन्यपि नाथमाभूत् किं त्वन्तकसि लुलितात् पततां विमानात् भक्तिं मुहुः प्रवहतां त्वयि मे प्रसङ्गो भूयादनन्तमहताममलाशयाना येनाद्यसोल्बणमुरुव्यसनं भवाब्धिं नेष्ये भवद्गुणकथामृतपानमत्तः तेन स्मरन्त्यतितरां प्रियमीशमर्त्यं ये चान्वदसुतसुहृद्गृहवित्तदाराः ये त्वब्जना भवदीयपदारविन्द सौगन्ध्यलुब्धहृदयेषु कृतप्रसङ्गाः तिर्यन्नगद्विजसरीसृपदेव दैत्य मर्त्यादिभिः परिचितं सदसद्विशेषम् रूपं स्थविष्टमजते महदाद्यनेकम् नातः परं परमवेद्विनयत्र वादः कल्पान्त एतदखिलं जठरेण गृह्णन् शेते पुमान् स्वदृगनन्तसखस्तदङ्के यन्नाभिसिन्धुरुह काञ्चनलोकपद्म गर्भे धुमान् भगवते प्रणतोऽस्मि तस्मै त्वं नित्यमुक्तपरिशुद्धविबुद्ध आत्मा कूटस्थादिपुरुषो भगवास्त्यधीशः यद्बुद्ध्यवस्थितिमखण्डितया स्वदृष्टया द्रष्टा स्थितावधिमुखो व्यतिरिक्त आस्ते यस्मिन् विरुद्धगतयो ह्यनिशं पतन्ति विद्यादयो विविधशक्तय आनुपूर्व्यात् तद्ब्रह्म विश्वभवमेकमनन्तमाद्यम् आनन्दमात्रमविकारमहं प्रपद्ये सत्याशिषो हि भगवंस्तव पादपद्मम् आशीस्तथानुभजतः पुरुषार्थमूर्तेः अप्येवमर्य भगवान् परिपाति दीनान् वाश्रेव वत्सकमनुग्रहकातरोऽस्मान् स्थानाभिलाषी तपसि स्थितोऽहम् त्वां प्राप्तवान् देव मुनीन्द्रगुह्यम् काचं विचिन्वन्नपि दिव्यरत्नम् स्वामिन् कृतार्थोऽस्मि वरं न याचे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे.
Right, so nice Vishnu Stuti by Dhruv Maharaj, right? And we'll see you tomorrow at 10 p.m. Yeah? 7:30 India time. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.